Right. So today we have Gideon Shalwick. Gideon, am I pronouncing your surname correct?
You sure are. Thank you.
Shalwick. Yes,
Yep.
we are actually fellow countrymen. Right? Both of us are from South Africa. Gideon is my next target for the list of questions in my project on self-knowledge. Gideon, thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
You're very welcome. I'm really looking forward to this interview. It's something a little bit different. So I'm looking forward to see what we unravel today.
Exactly, massively, massively. Now, just for you guys watching this at home, this project has two main purposes. All right. First of all, it is to cultivate compassion. Right? You know, when you walk past the streets like this, and one person walks on this side of the street, and they point fingers and they go, "Oh, it's your fault! It's your fault! It's your fault!" And then the other people on this other side of the street go, "Oh, it's your fault! It's your fault!" Both are blaming each other, but neither one actually understand that you are me and I am you. So the onus at the end of the day always lies with ourselves. So in order to truly understand and become very, very compassionate towards our fellow man, brother, sister, mother, father, it starts with understanding ourselves. It starts with self-knowledge. So that's exactly what this project is about. I already feel like I'm talking too much because I'm usually on the other side asking the questions. Gideon, can you give us just a very quick, brief intro about yourself, what you do, and how people can reach out to you?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Gideon Shalwick. I live in Australia on the Sunshine Coast at the moment. I'm originally from South Africa, as we talked about, but I've been out of there for about 26 years. Currently, I'm a father, husband, and a father of three children, beautiful children, and also an entrepreneur. I run a business called Splashio, where we help people get their videos ready for social media. And so basically what we do is people send us their videos, and then we transcribe the videos manually and put it into a really nice format with a good headline, a call to action, video progress bar, your logo, your branding, all your colors, all this sort of stuff. So it's just crisp and ready to go to publish on social media. So that's what we do at Splashio. But I'm also on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me there, just search for Gideon Shalwick, and happy to connect with you. Just say you've listened to this interview, and we can have a chat.
Sweet. I can hear you have your pitch polished.
Oh, well, that one came out. That was a brand new one. So
Perfect. Perfect. Right, sir, let's jump straight into it. Gideon, in your own opinion, what would you say is the hardest, to change or to stay the same?
okay, so I think that really depends on the person. For me, I find change easy. I love change. I love variety. But I know that a lot of people are not like that. In fact, it's the opposite for most people, it seems. And it might have something to do with the kind of personality you have. I'm not sure whether that's something that you're born with or something that you develop over time. In my situation, I'm more of an extroverted person. I'm also slightly more extroverted than introverted, not fully extroverted, but I'm slightly more extroverted. But the key thing with me is that I'm very intuitive. So in other words, I get I'm an ideas person. So my head is in the clouds all the time. And I think with people who are intuitive as opposed to sensing, in general, I think the intuitives embrace change a lot more than others. So I think it really depends on where you're at on that spectrum, from intuitive to sensing, and perhaps to a degree also whether you're more extroverted or introverted. I think perhaps if you're more extroverted, my guess is that you'd probably be more interested in change as well than staying the same. But then I guess it comes down to how much change, and to which degree we're talking about as well. There's probably a certain amount of change and a certain amount of uncomfortableness that anybody can handle, but that's a sliding scale as well. So if it goes over a threshold, then you go, whoa, hang on, that's just too much. So for example, for me, probably a place where I would be very much out of my comfort zone would be if I had to go to a country where they don't speak either English or Afrikaans, which is my mother tongue, and I'd have to learn the new language from scratch, and do business there and live a life there. That would be, I think, a real big challenge. I was just thinking the other day, if we were forced to speak Chinese, for example, or Mandarin, I mean, that would be a pretty big challenge. I would do it if we have to, right? But it would be a fairly big change that would be relatively uncomfortable for me. I guess the other thing to think about as well is whether that change is desirable, whether it can bring a desirable outcome, from making that change, and the motivation that you have for it as well. I read a really, really cool book recently called, I should say that again. I started reading.
Go for it, yeah.
I started reading a really cool book called Tiny Habits. Now, the reason I said I started reading it's because I've only read the first 1 or 2 chapters, and I got so much value from it that I haven't had to read any further yet. I'm still sort of processing, but. What B.J. Fogg is the author. What he talked about in there was a model for modeling any kind of behavior and bringing about any kind of change in people. And it basically had only 3 components. One was you had, or basically what he said, that it would bring about to bring about change. You only needed 3 things in place. First of all, you needed to have a high enough motivation. Secondly, it needs to be easy enough. It can't be too hard. And thirdly, there needs to be some kind of a prompt. So he calls it, PAM for short. P for prompt, A for ability. So make it, is it easy enough? Can you do it? Do you have the ability to do it? And then M for motivation. And I think when it comes to any kind of change coming up there, it's like, am I motivated enough for it? Do I want to do this? Secondly, is it easy enough for me to do? How big is this challenge, or changed? Will I have to really, go and learn a brand new language and then do business in a brand new language, all this sort of thing? Or is it just a matter of, something much easier, like, in my case, easy is to start a new business or come up with a new idea, So I love that sort of change. And then the only other thing left is a prompt, is there something that would prompt you to take you on that journey of change. So I think, I think that's why it's variable also, that, it's like if you bring in personality, but then also this model, if you marriage those things together, whether you're intuitive or sensing, and then whether you've got the motivation, is it easy enough, and is there a prompt, you bring all those things together, that can give you a bit of an indication, I think, for, whether change is going to be easy or not.
I hear you. I tell you, one thing is very certain by everything that you have just said. You like to think.
Yes,
very much.
Maybe a bit too much.
Well, there's no such thing as too, but still, yeah, you are certainly a thinker, sir. I love
thinking. I love thinking.
Change. The Greeks said 2,400 years ago, Heraclitus, he said that change is the only constant thing in life. The constant flux of life is the only constant. In my personal experience, certainly, and I've been down that road of thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. At the end of the day is, can I or can't I? How do I know? By changing, quite literally. Sometimes it is as easy as just literally starting to do something different. And inevitably, everything in life is a pattern. Whether it's a big pattern, a small pattern, whatever pattern. But if we want to change, we just change what we do.
I've often thought about that too, and sometimes you could overthink something and analyze it, get analysis paralysis, and never actually get to take that action or make that change that you need to do. And then until you then actually just start, you start with something small. That's when the change actually starts to begin.
Exactly.
So it's a process for sure. But I think if you do want to make the change, you got to take that first little step, whatever it is.
That leap, yeah. Just before we go into the next question, you just reminded me of an experience that I went through last year on Christmas Day. We relocated to Spain last year, beginning of December. So Christmas Day, everything is closed, totally, right? New country, we've been here for a week and a half. My Spanish is limited to hola, handele, and whatever else I remember from cartoons as a child, right?
It's a couple of words more than me.
So, of course, my missus then, on Christmas Day, she goes, listen, yeah, I would like bread rolls and cheese. Yeah,
Right.
so Marcel then, the kind of person, he goes, okay, I will accept this challenge. And I just went into brand new city, no language, nothing at all, just walkabouts in Australia, looking for bread and cheese. I came back with fresh bread and cheese, and it was an amazing experience. You know.
Was this now in
So once
Australia
again-
or in Spain? Where did you do this?
No, it was here. It was
Oh,
here
okay.
in Spain.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was here in
And
Spain.
that'd be, especially if
Now,
nobody's speaking
we're
English, that'd be a challenge.
on Christmas Day. So only number of, there were only 2 or 3 shops open. So I had to find them, then communicate as well with them what I want. I love this.
Right.
It's these small things that show us what we actually are capable of if we don't think about it.
For sure.
Yeah. But my own personal story. Right, sir. Are we ready to move on to the second one?
Absolutely, yeah.
Please explain to me, what do you see as being the difference between happiness and success?
That's a great question. I just had a very interesting chat with my developer this morning, and every now and then we talk a little bit about personal development, this sort of stuff. And I happened to watch a little inspirational clip from Arnold Schwarzenegger on YouTube this morning, and he quoted someone else, and it was along the lines of work. And it had to do with success, like what he asked, what is success? How does he define success? Or how do you get to success at least? And he said, work as hard as hell and advertise, and it was,
True.
Yeah, it actually fits in really well with a model that I've been working on, which is, essentially related to creating value and then basically scaling that value. It's the same sort of thing. You've got to work tremendously hard. When I mean hard, it doesn't have to be the kind of grinding hard work, but it's the kind. I think it's a lot easier if it's work that's suited for your personality, right? But using that passionately hard work, and then using that to create value, and then being able to leverage it through marketing and advertising and promotion and this sort of stuff. So it's a very similar model, but it got me thinking about what is success again, and I think he sort of asked me what is success, and I think to success and happiness, how do they relate? But I think it's interesting how you would define that. It's different for everybody, right? But I think there's at least 2 components to success for me. One part of it is what I'm doing now, and in the now, and what am I doing every day. So it's a process sort of related question, and then there's an outcome to that process, right? So you've got process and outcome; those 2 things. The process creates the outcome. Now, some people can create a goal, like an outcome that they work towards, and that's they would say to themselves, once I reach this goal or this outcome, that would mean success for me. So, for example, make X number of dollars, or have X number of dollars or money in your bank account, or own this car, or have this relationship, or whatever the outcome is. It's like a far away or some time in the distance kind of a goal. People go, if I can just get that thing, I will be successful. And they make the mistake of saying, if I can just get that goal, I will be happy. And there's a difference between happiness and success there, because success is almost like getting the right answer. You get a check. You go, okay, you got the right answer, you got the right outcome, check. Now the check mark might give you some momentary happiness or delight or joy, or whatever you want to call it. But once you have it, of course, if you've ever reached a goal before, you'll know that it doesn't last. So then the other thing that's left is like the process of getting there. So So what does that look like? Is it a sort of a the kind of process that you absolutely hate, but you do it and you put together enough motivation together just because you know you're going to get that outcome and you're going to love that outcome, but you hate getting there. Now, I would suggest that wouldn't make you any happy. That wouldn't make you happy, right? Because you would just be grinding and grinding, and then finally get this goal that you think is going to make you happy, and then that happiness only lasts for a very short time. And then you gotta set another new goal so that you can be motivated again to work towards that new thing. So it can actually create this spiral of unhappiness where you're never happy, and it's never something that that you attain. And so I think really the secret is to make the process fun and to make the process your happiness. And if you can make the outcomes in such a way that it's things or outcomes that you actually want, then that's like a big bonus. But I think that the ultimate way, at least that I've found, for continual joy and fulfillment and happiness from day to day, moment to moment, is to find ways to enjoy the process. And there's a whole lecture behind that to find that. But I think that would be for me the difference there between happiness and success. I think if you can enjoy the process of moving towards a goal, that's one way to define happiness and fulfillment. Because through doing that process in that sort of a way, it's not like you're not doing it for the outcome. You're doing it for the sake of the joy of doing it, and you pick up a lot of other cool things like building relationships and making friendships and learning new skills, getting in flow state, all this sort of stuff. There's a whole bunch of things that goes into it. It's not about achievement, it's about an enjoyment and fulfillment. That's really what it comes down to. And then getting those outcomes is like a bonus, like it's a natural outcome of you being in flow state and you enjoying what you're doing and you having fulfillment through what you're doing. So I think if you can set it up that way, then your chances of continual happiness over time is going to be much higher than setting these goals and then you might not enjoy the process of getting there at all. And making that goal the dream for you to come true. It's like chasing the antelope. I had this friend of mine at school. He'd always tease me and say, have you caught the antelope yet, Gideon? And it's like, because I was always chasing goals, and I don't think I was ever happy, chasing those goals. And I'd reach them, and I'm very good at reaching goals because I'm a very driven person as well. That's another topic we can talk about as well, but certainly a topic that I've had a lot of enlightenment about in the last few years. But certainly, I think if you're reaching the goals and you're not happy in the process of doing it, what's the point? Because getting those goals, it doesn't matter what it is. So far, I haven't found any goal that I've achieved that gives me everlasting fulfillment and happiness and joy. You might get that momentary excitement, and especially if there's in my case, I like my toys. I like, for example, I've just purchased this thing called Remarkable. It's like an e-ink device that's kind of like a paper replacement. Now, I waited 6 months for this thing to arrive, and the wait was excruciating. But when it arrived, I was so happy, and it's been about 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm still happy using it. I still enjoy using it. But it's worn off already. I dropped it a couple of times, got a little dent in it. So like my little goal and that happiness in it that was tied up to that was very momentary. So I think, that's at least one way, I think, to define the difference, at least for me, between happiness and success.
So immediately what jumps into mind is, what do these words mean for you? A very powerful car without a steering wheel. Finish the sentence.
A very powerful car without a steering wheel. That reminds me of my physics days, for my Master of Engineering Management program leader, was the director. He said, he's actually South African as well, but he would always look at people and where they're going, and he would say, there's someone who's like a big personality and they got a big following and everything, but they got no direction. And and then he'd find someone else who's who's also, they've got magnitude, but they also have direction. So he would distinguish between them as scalars and vectors, So I think what in physics, of course, a scalar is something that's just got magnitude and no direction, whereas a vector has both magnitude and direction. So I think what you just said there with being in a car, a powerful car without a steering wheel, is like a scalar, and you could probably make quite some impact, but it might not be any valuable impact. It might be quite negative impact as well if you're, if you're going off the road or driving into other people or things like that. So, I think any sort of power needs to be directed. Definitely, that's for sure, intelligently.
But like for everybody now that's watching this, like you guys will come across moments in your life when you ask this question: what the hell am I supposed to do, and how do I know? Right. So majority of the time, what we do is like what Gideon just said, we have a drive, and we feel that drive, and that drives pushes us right forwards, left, right, backwards. But unless we come to a point where we put our foot down and we say, okay, this is the thing I'm going to do now, irrespective of this is going to be for the rest of my life or just today. If you don't decide to start somewhere, nothing is going to happen. So the trick about that is then the faster you decide, the more mistakes you will make. And the more mistakes you will make, those mistakes, they actually end up being a guide, showing you what you're good at, what you're not good at, what's needed, what's not needed, what can you do, what don't you want to do. Like you said, Gideon, it's a whole process.
Yeah, I like what you said there. It sort of reminded me about another conversation I had with another really deeply spiritual friend of mine, and he talked about life basically being a series of zigzags, and the idea is that at the beginning the zags and zigs are pretty big, but and you sort of you start going the other way when you bump your head. Ouch, yeah, ouch, not that way, not that way, and then you end up sort of honing in and eventually finding your way. But I do believe that there are, in terms of finding your direction and finding your purpose and figuring out what it is you're supposed to be doing with your life. I don't think anybody, well, there's a caveat there. I was going to say not everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing with their life. There certainly seems to be people from a very young age that just know. They just know what it is they're supposed to be doing. But then there are the vast majority of us, who fall into the category of not knowing, and we got to kind of figure it out. But I think there are certainly mentors and information and guides and strategies and ideas around that can help you zigzag less and help you figure out what that path is for you. Definitely, there's definitely help around for that. And I mean, I've had to figure out a lot of it for myself, but I think it's interesting you've used the word drive as well, because I've certainly found that there are some unconscious drives in all of us, and and it's amazing once you realize consciously what your own drive has been all your life. I only realized mine a few years ago, that it was unconscious, and it was so interesting when it became conscious. I could go back. And I could ask the question and go back in time and ask the question, why did I do that thing? Why did I do that thing? Why did I do that project? Why did I buy those clothes? Why did I make those friends? Why did I start that business? Why did I buy that car? Why did I immigrate to that country, etc.? Why did I go and live in that particular neighborhood? Absolutely everything, absolutely everything was tainted or colored by this unconscious drive. And then as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, I've just figured out, I've figured out this drive that I've had, but it was kind of like that car without the steering wheel, it was driving, but it wasn't directed properly. And I think it wasn't until I realized that this thing here, that when you realize what that thing is that you've been searching for all your life, once you find it, you realize that's the very thing that you're supposed to be giving away to others. So the thing that you've been searching for all your life is the thing that you're really supposed to be giving away. That's your gift, because it's so interesting. Like, and just to give you an example of that, Tony Hsieh, right, from Zappos, he's just passed away tragically, right? And you look at this little interesting article I read from him. Now I don't know how true the article is, but certainly if it's true, this would really hold with this sort of an idea, where his gift was the gift of happiness, and you can see that in his life. You can see that in the book that he wrote on delivering happiness. I read that a few years ago, and how he set up Zappos, and then how he set up that sort of community in downtown LA or something. It was all driven by him searching for that happiness for himself. That's what it seemed like. It was like that's what he was searching for all his life, and in the process of him searching for it, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, he picked up skills and knowledge and know-how and friends and contacts to help him figure out what is this happiness thing, this thing that he's been searching for. And in the process, inadvertently or advertently, he ended up giving that gift to the world. And how many people have heard of Zappos now, or Tony Hsieh, or reading his book? And so that to me is like it ties in really well with, even though sometimes we might not even realize it, but we're preparing ourselves in a way as we are searching for this thing that we think we want. We're inadvertently preparing ourselves to be giving that away as a gift to others. And it's like there's a definite switch in your life when you realize that. Not everybody can realize that, but I think when you realize that thing that you've been searching for, once you figure out what that is, once it becomes conscious, and then you flick it around to going, instead of making it about me, you start giving it away, that's when your life changes.
Totally get that. I'm sitting here smiling, going, oh yeah, I get that. It's beautiful what you're saying. Because, I mean, of course, this philosophy that you're talking about, right, comes from the East, right? It comes from China, it comes from the yogis 4,500 years ago in India. Like, and what they've been teaching back then was literally the thing that you're searching for the most is inside you. And once you figure out what's inside you, then you learn how to communicate to give it back.
Right.
And at the end of the day, once we have all of our ducks in a row, we have no choice but to start thinking about philanthropy and how can we make everything around us better for everybody.
So true. I mean, the immediate example for me is what I'm doing in our company Splashio now. So if you think about the one of the core purposes of Splashio, it's really to help people with becoming seen, getting seen around the world, and essentially from that is to feel worthwhile or to be worthy of who they are. And it very much the theme around that is about significance, and that's been my theme. My subconscious drive all throughout life is the search for significance, or the search for worthiness, or the search to be to be worth something, or to be seen. So the outcome of all that now is what we have in Splashio. We're helping people to find themselves in the way, and to be seen, and for them to realize that they're worth something, and that what they have to say is worth sharing. And so that, I think, has been sort of a core driver behind what we're doing in Splashio now. I mean, on the surface you might not see that immediately, but when you look at the sort of people we're attracting, they all have this inner desire for significance, and for them to be seen, and to be sharing something, to be sharing their message with the world, and that very much aligns with the gift that I'm giving through our business now. So it's like, I guess it's a personal example of that in action for sure.
Totally. So I'm conscious of the time, right? So we go through one more question, and then we conclude. I think let's call it possibly part 1 or parts 2 of this section of the interview, because I think at a later stage what we do is we connect again and then we continue, because I'd actually really love to go through all the questions with you.
Sounds good.
Totally. Perfect. So concluding question for this section, 1 of 3, I think we might realistically go for. Gideon. And it was a beautiful circle, right? What is the difference for you between wants and needs? And how does one's personal understanding of these two concepts influence uncertainty within us?
Yeah. Well, I think wants and needs have become a bit blurry in first world countries for sure. Because I mean, really, if I think if I look at everyone here in Australia, most people, especially compared to say third world countries. I grew up in South Africa, so it was like I grew up in a. South Africa was quite often defined as a first world country inside a third world country, so you could see both worlds in one. And in Australia, it's mostly you define it as first world country, but certainly here we hardly have any real needs. All our needs are covered. We have electricity, we have power, we've got Wi-Fi, we've got water, clean water to drink. You don't have to worry about the water here. It's free. You don't have to pay for the water here. It's incredible. We have clean beaches, we have roads, we have anything you could ever imagine or want is available for you to get if you really want to. And everything has been provided. There's plenty of food, so all the needs are covered. So most, in terms of the psyche, I think in Australia, maybe most first world countries, there's mostly, I think what we have are wants, so I want an iPhone. Do I really need one? Like I could say, yeah, I need one for my business, or, I need it to make sales or to make sales calls or whatever, but do you really need it? You can probably get away with something else much simpler and much cheaper than that if you really have to. So I think that's first thing to sort of consider, that what you might consider as your need right now is probably more like a want, and to be clear on that, and I think that sort of might make you immediately feel more grateful for all your wonderful blessings that you already have. So but certainly I think there is a difference between needs and wants. I mean, in marketing we always talk about that, what are the needs versus the wants, and oftentimes the products and services that do best is where there's a real need, a real urgent need. For example, if you've cut your finger or you've cut your arm off, there's a real big need, an urgent need to solve that. And so if you, or a headache, it's often the one used. Like I've got a headache now. I need a solution now. I have a need for a solution right now. That's like that would be defined as a need, and a good kind of need to exploit as a marketer, right? Because it
powerful
becomes
niche.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, but and a want might be more along the lines of I want a chocolate. I don't really need it, but I want it. So how does that relate to uncertainty and change? To be honest, I haven't thought about it much, but needs and wants. So I think.
So do you mind if I quickly lead a little bit, right? Because
Sure.
Everything you're saying there falls beautifully into place. So what I was thinking about whilst listening, if we're given everything we might need, what happens when something happens that is totally unforeseen, that we've never come across?
Right.
What do? We look towards the source that's always provided. But if that source is only a human being as well, that's just set up a really, really good perpetual system, then everybody is going, oh, who do we turn to? Who's going to help us? What's going to happen?
Okay, so that's a very interesting angle. So, for example, I guess let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. It's like if you were to remove things that we actually need, that would create quite a lot of uncertainty, right? That's what you're sort of getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do we do about that as human beings? Mm-hmm. How do we respond?
Correct.
Yeah, I guess that's especially for people in first world countries, that's a tough one because we don't hardly ever have to deal with that, so because everything is provided for us mostly, and it's not until you travel a bit and see other places where you go, wow, like most of the needs of these people are not even met, and they're really struggling to make ends meet. It sort of opens up your eyes a bit, and I think that, well, I don't know. I guess I've had a very lucky life in a sense. When I was 16, we immigrated from South Africa to New Zealand, and we were always, in terms of world standards, like especially the third world standards, we were very well off. I mean, comparatively to our peers in New Zealand, we probably weren't. Like, we were sort of more at the bottom end, when we immigrated, because we lost all our wealth. We had to start from scratch again. So in comparison to everyone in New Zealand, we might have been considered poor. Or I remember the first house we stayed in, we didn't have any furniture or anything, right? So because all our stuff was still coming on the ship. It took about, I don't know, it took months, I don't know, weeks maybe. I think it was 3 months. But anyway, in the first few weeks, we were so down and out, just because we didn't know any better. But we rented this house. The carpets, the previous owners must have, or tenants, was a rental property. They must have had pets in there, because it smelled like dog pee, and so the first few nights, at least the first night, I can't remember how long this lasted for, not very long, luckily, but we slept on the carpet. We didn't have anything, so we just put all our clothes on. It was like really cold for us in New Zealand. We put all our clothes on that we had. I remember taking one of my shirt and stuffing other clothes into the shirt to become my pillow, for the night or the next couple of nights. And it was a terrible house, but I mean, it fulfilled our needs. We had a roof over our heads, and we had a place to sleep. There was food around us. And compare that to, say, some folks in Africa or India or other very poor places around the world. Parts of it. We're pretty well off. So I guess even though there was certainly a sense of uncertainty during those times, we were still okay. We didn't have to really stress about it that much. But certainly, I think during those times when you get things taken away from you, things that were that you just maybe assumed to always be there, that certainly makes you then question, where does this all come from? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it? Is there someone else looking out for me, or is it just me all alone? Is it, or is it just us here as humans? So there's all these sort of bigger questions, I think, that start coming in when uncertainty comes into your life. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I like being an entrepreneur. I embrace uncertainty in a way, because it always makes me realize that, hey, I'm very inadequate at this life thing, and I need things, people, and resources, strength, and whatever else around me to make things happen. And that's that's all part of the creative process, which really excites me. So I don't know, maybe that all sort of plays together.
Twofold, right? First of all, I would quickly just like to add something to what you just said. By ending this, you said it makes you feel quite inadequate at this life thing. Maybe that's why I like being an entrepreneur. So, if I may, I used to also think that I'm quite inadequate in life. right? Definitely through my teens and my early 20s. And then I realized I'm still learning. And if I decide now that I'm inadequate, how the hell am I ever going to give myself an opportunity to continue to learn, to figure out whatever I might end up as? And that served as a catalyst to help me not make up my mind about what I think about myself.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
And it allowed me then the possibility of becoming relatively objective about my own behaviors, because then I wasn't I weren't judging myself anymore.
I guess it frees you up, right? It frees you up from that sort of baggage, and just sort of allows you to. Yeah. So it's almost like, you're probably familiar with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow and flow state, right? And it's almost like when you get into flow state, you forget about yourself. You sort of yourself moves out of the way, and it gives you this unconscious freedom to just create and be creative or be in flow state, and that's a very great place for happiness and fulfillment, I think, when you can get into flow state, and I think that's one of the best ways for being able to give your gift, is to be able to figure out what is that flow state for you, and it very much, from what I can tell, relates very much back to what your natural gifts and talents are, and if you can do that and get yourself, your conscious egoic self, out of the way, that gives you that freedom to truly work from that really creative place and make the world a better place without ego. I mean, ego always comes into it. You can't get rid of it, but it's certainly it becomes less of ego, and from that creative place, and it gives you certainly for me, it gives me a ton of fulfillment and a sense of being worthy. But it's kind of like it's not about me. It's like it's almost irrelevant. Me doesn't come into it anymore in a way. It goes beyond ego then when you're able to create from that sort of a place, for sure.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And for those of you watching this, that there's a question later on, right, in part 2 or part 3, we're still deciding which part of this interview. What is the self? So if you want to know how Gideon is answering that question, what is the self, just continue to the next section of this interview. For now, however, Gideon, thank you so much, right? And we will tie up another time when both of us are around the same fire, and we shall continue asking these questions. For everybody watching, can you quickly where can people get you and what exactly do you do? Because I'm fairly certain just after these first 3 questions, a lot of people watching this are going to realize that they need what you have to offer.
Yeah, sure thing. So, I mean, first of all, if you're interested in just connecting with me, hop on over to LinkedIn and search for Gideon Shalwick, and happy to connect with you there. Just maybe mention that you've seen this interview, and that'll give me a bit of context, and we can have a bit of a chat. Exactly. But if you're interested in what I'm doing in terms of the natural extension of who I am and what I think my purpose is, certainly at the moment, head on over to splasheo.com. That's splasheo.com, and that if you want to get your videos into shape for social media, we've got a free trial there at the moment where you can get your first 4 videos done for free. And there's lots more information there that you can check out. But like now that you've seen this interview, it's like you'll know what it's about. You'll know it's about helping you express yourself and helping you share your message with the world, and giving yourself that check of approval. To say you're good enough. You are worthy. You have something to share. And with a SplashEO service, we enable you to do that and to be able to share that with the world. So if you're keen on learning more about that, head on over to splasheo.com. But also connect with me on LinkedIn if you're keen to connect.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Right, this is the conclusion of part 1 of, like I said, we're still deciding. Tune in for the next episode of Interview with Gideon Shalwick. Take care.